do you see them using an actual AI generated clip?
Yeah.
Say you have 360 angles in every possible lighting condition, but you just couldn't get it to do that certain thing, and AI can make it flawless. You can see
Yeah.
them using it in the future.
I think they can.
Welcome to my very first podcast called Wild Talks. This is episode 1 with Jimmy MacDonald. Jimmy has been an assistant for Nat Geo and BBC filmmakers for years, and he has some great intel on what is coming and what it's like to be alongside a shoot, for example, in Alaska. I hope you guys enjoyed the very first episode of Wild Talks. Why don't you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Okay. So my name is Jimmy MacDonald. I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. And I kind of do a little bit of everything in the outdoors. So primarily I'm an outdoor guide with paddling and kind of the main thing, paddling in water. Um, but I also do a little bit of environmental science work, consulting, stuff like that. And then I work with wildlife tours and photography tours in the Antarctic and the Arctic regions. And associated with that, I do a lot of work with film crews, doing wildlife filming. And most of the time, that's big animals, bears, wolves,
And that's
uh, things like that.
And that's how we met in Hallo Bay, which was turns out to be like one of the most epic 4 days of both of our lives, right?
Yeah, for sure. I had no idea it was going to be that amazing. Getting there, I'd seen or I guess while going back, yeah, the fellow that I met on a shoot a handful of years ago asked me if I wanted to come up to Alaska and work on a shoot, and it was a few years in the works, and I'd heard about how epic it was and heard about the scenery and how the wildlife behaved, and then we just rolled up in on a catamaran with all of our filming gear and our crew, um, and then you guys had your camp there on the same beach, and we shared the spot, and it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, so how did you like first get into photography and wildlife, and what did you like do? Was there a life before this lifestyle now?
Mm. Well, yeah, I've always been interested in wildlife and always been interested in photography. I was using my mom's original film camera from her days in film school back in the early 70s, I guess. Originally, I was using it would have been a 70 to 200 millimeter lens on a Pentax K1000, and I splurged and I bought myself a teleconverter and was shooting on film. And then a few years later, or maybe like 5, 6 years later, I had a couple get me into digital photography, and so that kind of opened up the doors. But really, wildlife photography, um, as an amateur, very, very, very excited to do it just all the time. But really, maybe the last 12 or 13 years, kind of getting more heavy into it. And that's kind of when my
Yeah.
career as a guide shifted from just the paddle sports into more kind of all around nature and wildlife focused for tours. So the wildlife specific stuff and really, really just hanging out with my telephoto permanently on my camera started probably 12 or 13 years ago. And now it's just become obsessive. Like it's a huge draw to just get me in the outdoors. And there's very few activities I do without my camera in tow, whether it's skiing in the winter. I've got my camera over my shoulder and broken more than a few pieces on the camera from trying to tote it around everywhere, or going out on a paddleboard and having a pelican case there with the camera gear on the water, or
Yeah.
lives in my vehicle. Every minute I'm driving, there's a camera with me, basically.
Yeah, and like going all that adventure stuff is definitely a big risk, not just for your camera gear, but for you too, because you're just depending on how heavy you want to go, like you can be adding some probably off balance, right? You've probably just felt it's not as comfortable as going with nothing. It's just like the people that hike mountains with just like a bottle of water. It's like that's way easier than hiking with a bunch of camera gear.
Yeah, for sure. It's and that's why for me it like I constantly have the dilemma in my head of what camera or what lens do I take, and 99% of the time I just fall back to the same kind of super telephoto, and whether it was my older 1 to 400 millimeter, or then I jumped to a 200 to 500 that was even an older lens, but more reach, and then now I'm shooting the mirrorless lens that's like up to 600 mils, and
Yeah, that
the
180 to 600 is like that's like a perfect wildlife lens.
yeah, and for me, I find like the nature of the way I take photos or get outside, I'm trying most of the time I'm mixing everything all together, and so I can't wrap my head around having a prime lens. Like as much as I'd love to have a lens that's worth as much as a vehicle and be fixed at 600 millimeters, too often I'm so close to the wildlife I don't need it, and then it's also so big and so heavy I just can't even take it with me or wear it over my back with other gear all the time.
Yeah,
So it's
I was pretty pumped that I finally got the 400 last year, and I definitely got some of the best shots I've ever taken in my life with it. Lately, I've been kind of thinking like it's definitely not like I started using a 200 800, which is a little bit lighter. And it's just nice to have something versatile and like you said, like sometimes you're getting a little too close, which is dependent like on how your comfort level is, but we've shot bears at wide angle before, so I like to have the variety. It's not a 50 to 1000, but that 200 800 is a really nice combination. I think I'm gonna take that one that Katmai is here.
yeah, especially I mean for me going up to Katmai, it was a big torn decision on what lens to take, and I'd heard about the kind of the environment and the situation there at the beach and this close proximity or the opportunities that might present themselves, and I had a real hard time deciding what to take, and ended up taking a wide angle with me, not very wide, but like a 24-70, and ended up using it quite a few days and had a lot of fun with it. And because of how cool and unique that location is, like there's not a lot of other places in the world where you're gonna have an opportunity to use that
Yeah.
with a brown bear.
How about that day that you were getting some stuff out of the bags, and then the mom and cubs came right out to you, and they were just sitting there right with you,
Yeah, that was amazing. Well,
right
and
on the
actually,
shoreline there.
that was such a funny day because I guess it was you and Jen and Steve were probably sitting side by side, and then me and John were out there together, and I think our producer was there. But because of the parks regulations, we couldn't leave any gear unattended, and so we were kind of working the tide level fluctuations, and having to move the camera gear cache every 30 seconds as the water trickled in was getting a little bit tedious. And then eventually you just kind of break down and you go, okay, you've got this, you stay here, and then I'll move all the gear in one go. And it's park regulations and for the benefit of the wildlife so that they're not enticed by a pile of gear. But
Yeah.
I kind of ended up in this predicament where it's like, what should like I had to just stay with the gear. It was the rules, and it was kind of I remember that moment there, and it was my first situation in Katmai where I was presented with like, how do I meet the park regulations and how do I act around these bears safely or responsibly? It was an interesting dynamic. There's so much going on, especially with the fact that there's park rangers there 24 hours a day watching, and
Yeah.
yeah, like in most other situations, even with the mom and cubs, probably I wouldn't have let them come so close, just because the chance of them getting too interested might be there, and in other locations we're able to like kind of act towards them and deter them a little bit. But in Katmai, it seems like it's a little bit more frowned upon, and so with the gear cache there, I had to just stand my ground and didn't really want to,
Yeah.
and a unique situation, a mom and her three little cubs, like they're koi from that year, and yeah, you really don't want, you just don't have the urge to do anything aggressive towards them in any way, even just body body language. It feels
Yeah,
bad.
but you have a lot of you have a lot of experience with even polar bears, which are what some people consider the most aggressive towards humans. Do you find any differences or similarities, between them? Do you feel comfortable close to a polar bear in some situations, or probably just depends on the bear itself, right?
Yeah, I think most for me it was like this was my first close encounter. This season was my first longest amount of time like spent with brown bears and in that situation. And so I was doing background research, talking to friends, talking to different kind of experts in the field, and depending on who you talk to, without naming people's names, but I was hearing from a professor who studies polar bears that polar bears are so easily predicted and you can trust them so much. And then this professor talks about how many he's handled when they're sedated and that he feels very comfortable around polar bears, but he would never trust a grizzly bear. And then, not an academic, but someone who lived their life and worked in Katmai for ages, that person, they are way more comfortable around brown bears and they'll never trust a polar bear, even though now they live in a polar bear
Right,
town.
right.
And so everyone's got their own little opinions, and I kind of secretly think it's always ego driven, those opinions, whatever. You can play any story in any direction, but I still think polar bears are way more curious. I think it's a nature of their environment. When they see something that's
Yeah.
new, they come to it and check it out. Whereas brown bears, I don't know what exactly it is, but they seem to just kind of keep to themselves a bit more in a sense. Like if you happen to be on their path, then they might walk by you, but they aren't seeing you turn 90 degrees and changing their trajectory to come right over and check you out. Whereas that's often what a polar bear does as soon as it sees you. So,
Yeah. I know. I definitely seen um the polar bears in Churchill were different than the polar bears in Barrow, where they saw a human 500 yards away and they were gone. Where the polar bears in Churchill were just they didn't really care. You probably could have walked right up to them. Obviously they got that 160-yard rule or whatever it might be, but yeah, it's just so depending on how habituated they are. And Barrow was known for hazing their bears and either killing them or getting them out of there. Or they're usually pretty good with hazing them to get them away from town. So they know uh, what their limit is with people, which is pretty good for up there because I mean they definitely do walk through town just like they do in Churchill.
yeah, for sure. Actually, well, well, no, not, I spent a month or almost a month, I guess, in Barrow one spring when the ice was opening up and the whales were doing their migration. And a friend, his house was the first one on the water. And multiple times he had polar bears come right to his front yard in the morning and a few times right down city streets. And they definitely get chased out of town. But
Yeah.
we had some pretty good encounters with polar bears out on the ice in the spring in Barrow, where we were working away on pressure ridges, making ice roads, and we had bears right in the same pressure ridges with us, checking out what we were doing. And a couple times we had mums and cubs, like 2-year-old cubs maybe. They actually walked right through our camp in the middle of the night out on the ice, and it was just we were a detour and they weren't willing to make the detour, and they just walked between the tents and the boats and the snow machines and carried on their way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like I
It's
feel
funny.
like
The
I feel like even in Churchill, like or like talking about the different polar bear populations, it's so much more about just the individual bear. And then even you can't always just label one bear one way. It's like it's kind of what happened to that bear in the last 24 hours, or what happened to that bear last week or something. And that tells the story of how that bear is going to act today more than anything else.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny because if you do day trips to Katmai versus a camp, someone might have seen a bear every day last week, then they go away for a week and they come in for a day trip, but they have no idea that uh, a boar just killed two of their four cubs, and now that mom is on edge and doesn't want to be anywhere near you, and it might throw you off. And it's like you said, you don't know what happened to that bear in the last 24 hours. It could have just happened right before you got there, and that's why you kind of always have to really just observe before you make any moves. See, no matter what the situation is, just see how it changes. Or just like you could be with a mom and a boar will come up that hasn't been there this year and they're gone just like that. They smell them hundreds of yards away and they're just gone.
Yeah, and actually we experienced a few times in Katmai last summer where um, a park ranger who spends an awful lot of time there, and these are rangers that have worked multiple seasons there and different places, really comfortable in the wild, comfortable around the bears. Um, and I'm not saying to the point of complacency, but they spend 24 hours a day there roaming the sedge meadows, and it's just a matter of time before they have an encounter with a bear where they don't know what had just happened to it. And that we saw that at least twice this last summer, where one park ranger had came back from his camp and was walking through the meadow, didn't realize that a sow had full on charged um, two males that were fighting with each other a few hundred meters away, and she just fully charged them with no provocation and no even threat towards her. She just didn't want to risk it and rushed them, and she was just jacked up, and then this ranger kind of came strolling in minutes later or 20 minutes later and sort of thing, and this mother bear just stared and looked at that ranger who had knelt down and just saw a small silhouette in the grasses, and then kind of rushed towards them, and that startled them because they kind of assumed that they knew what was going on and how nice and gentle this mother bear had been, but they didn't know that there was this weird encounter. And I think that's, for me, like with polar bears or with the brown bears, the situations with the film, like working with a film crew, where we're just like essentially sun up to sundown tracking a subject or tracking a few subjects or something like that. We've got this humongous benefit, and it's like it's a perk of the job for me for sure, is actually being able to just stay with the animals as long as you're humanly willing to do it and put up with the heat or the bugs or sleep deprivation or whatever. But getting to see their full day with no breaks, kind of assuming you understand what's going on in their head a little bit, because you get to just immerse in their environment for that long. It's pretty cool, pretty unique.
You guys hit it hard for what was it, like 57 days or something like that? And then you guys had to transfer up and down to maintain your park permit just to go the north and south end, right?
Yeah, and eventually there was some concessions made, and I think the superintendent was out at one point and kind of saw, I don't know, that wasn't necessarily the smartest thing to do. So I don't know, maybe they'll relook at those kind of rules in the future, having to move camp.
Yeah.
Especially given the situation that they say they're building.
I think there's
park
definitely
say they're
some
building a
flaws.
cabin there. So
No way.
that's what they said. I don't know if that'll happen
That's
or
one
not.
thing Scott has always. Yeah, I know Scott just like definitely notices how every year it's just more and more people there, and it's just getting. You say those day trippers from Homer come in, and they got two freaking turbine otters coming in, and just, I mean, that's a lot of people coming off the plane out of nowhere.
That's a ton. Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember how late you were there for, like in the season, but we eventually got to the point where there was a guy doing day trips. I don't know if they're from Homer, I would assume maybe. Um, but the guide was getting dropped off by the pilot, and the plane was waiting, and then the plane would taxi and pick them up and move them to a new little stream and cross the rivers using the float plane. It was
Oh,
just it
yeah.
became like a
I
sideshow,
don't
a
know how I feel
circus
about
sideshow.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched it one time. The plane dropped these guys off, and it's a lot. Most of those people are coming in. It's just hip boots. They don't have the waders, just hip boots.
Yeah.
And they people got off that plane, and they were in deep water, and they got wet. And pretty sure those people, the pilots or whoever dropped them off, probably got in trouble for dropping them out that deep. Um, but you saw those people were stunned that they were in that deep of water. Kind of felt for them, but then you're like, yeah, get them out of here.
Yeah, it's nice to have some horror stories from people going home and saying how rough it was and miserable it was.
Yeah, I mean, you were there in some rough weather, and you guys had that tsunami warning, which made you guys go a little insane, huh?
Yeah, definitely. And we had two tsunami warnings. The first one was the earthquake by Sandpoint or something in the Aleutians, and then the second tsunami warning was the
Oh, was
earthquake
there?
over in Russia. Yeah.
Oh, I remember that one. You had friend there, right, in Kamchatka.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And we that first
Man.
one, we had happened to have a day where the two crews both stayed in camp. We were at the southern camp, I guess. But we just happened to all be sitting around the tent having a kind of a chat, and we're sitting on these little camp chairs in the tent visiting. So our internet's going because we've got the Starlink. But all of a sudden, someone goes, "Did you just feel that?" And we all stopped talking and sat still, and there was another tremor, and our chairs all wiggled.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, we're all on our phones, and there's someone from the Coast Guard we knew had texted. And but if we weren't sitting in camp, I don't know if we would have noticed it. Walking around the field, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I sit in my house or at work. I don't feel them that much. I feel them more at work because like, I think the building is different, but like even bigger ones, like I'm like, was that something? I don't know. I think I got something wrong with my balance or whatnot. And people will post online, they're like, did anyone feel that? And it's like a 4.2 or something. I'm like, there's no way you felt that. People are just sensitive to their areas, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and the park superintendent was on site when the second tsunami warning happened, which was the bigger one, I believe. And he was quite worried. And the park staff, they actually, I think they found out about it through us or through Scott. They didn't even get communications about it.
Yeah.
So it gave
Yeah,
them a
that's
bit
a
of a
tough thing.
realization. Yeah.
Yeah, because Scott's got friends and he's got, Starlink and everything, and he's got friends in the Coast Guard that are always keeping an eye out for him. Um, so when you're out there, whether you've been to Greenland and Canada and Katmai, when you're on a production shoot helping a cinematographer and a producer out, what does a day look like for you?
Well, my days are actually really nice on the shoots. So in general, I've kind of filled a few different roles on different shoots, and then sometimes it's all the roles. But typically, I get brought into a shoot from my outdoor background and my wildlife background. So I'm there to kind of look for the wildlife, help find it, help not predict or like not know exactly what it's doing, but try and foresee what's going on or watch the trends, and then be there for safety around the wildlife. So that's usually my um, top priority, and then second priority is assist the production as much as possible. But then sometimes I'm strictly production team and doing every role, but everything's equally shared. There's no kind of specific duty to be the main safety person or anything like that. Um, a general day for me, though, is seeing what the weather's going to be like. If there's going to be a predicted big change in the weather for the day, like something we have to worry about or pack extra gear for. And then kind of start the day. My typical day would be get up, and this would be kind of for anywhere where I work. Get up, have a coffee, or go to the bathroom. At the same time, I'm already going to a vantage point and taking a look at the environment, trying to get some height and see what I can see and see where the wildlife is that at that moment. And then head back, and usually by that point in time, the main camera operator is itching to go or is already waiting for me. And basically, it's now play catch up. So, I'll come back with some information. They'll already have their gear ready. They know what they want to do. So then it's quickly scramble, hopefully have as much of it packed from the night before as possible. But my task will usually involve carrying anything other than the main camera, essentially. So tripods.
Yeah, dude, you mean everything but the main camera.
Yeah. So I'll go on a tangent here once. So at one point on a shoot with my friend John, so he's got the camera, and I mean, here's the disclaimer. As soon as we start shooting and there's filming happening, he's carrying the legs, he's carrying the tripod head and the camera, which is ridiculous. And he's usually carrying it assembled. It's heavy. And so, but up until that point, it's all on me. So he's got the camera, but I've got a full-size set of legs, little tiny baby legs that they're almost the size of a little footstool. As many batteries as humanly possible. I think at one point we had 8 camera batteries alone, plus drone batteries, plus other stuff. So batteries, first aid kit, shelter, so we can batten down the hatches and get out of the wind or get out of the rain and just wait out things in shelter. I'll carry water filtration. I'll carry 2 water bottles for the day. Maybe a backup water bottle for my teammate. Of course, spare warm clothes for myself and rain gear. Tools. Then a drone. Often, if there's a drone on the shoot. I'm trying to think of what else I'm missing. But in the end, it ends up at a point where the shoulder straps of the backpack are looking to tear themselves out every time you lift it. And actually, if you aren't gentle on the pack, and we use these pretty beefy f-stop bags, but they're heavy duty, but if you just jerked one and threw it up on your shoulder, you'd probably tear the shoulder strap right out. And
yeah, man, the first time I saw you, you had 7 camera bags on your head. I was like, what in the world? I'm like, I don't want to do that job if they offered me to do it. That is insane.
Well,
you made it look like nothing.
But so then that's just the camera gear. And then because of our site there and the tidal fluctuations, we basically, we can't just allow the raising water level to stop us from accessing where the bears go. So if we're trying to stay with them as much as possible throughout the tide cycle. And, you watch one and the mom and the cubs swim across the little stream, and then they come back and forth and back and forth. And sometimes it's just minutes, and then all of a sudden those channels are too deep to wade. So we actually started carrying pack rafts. I don't know if you saw those when we had them on, but so on top of the whole bag was then a pack raft, which weighs about 30 pounds or 25 pounds. And paddles and a pump, and so that way we could just be with the wildlife wherever. And it helped only a handful of times, but when it helped, it was the only tool for the job. But yeah, so I've got all of that, and then now that we start filming, the camera guy, he's got the camera on the tripod head on a set of legs. But then there's still his backpack now. And so now I carry the same amount of space, but it's lighter. But now I take another bag and I throw it up on top. And so you kind of end up looking like you're a Nepalese Sherpa helping some rich British guy climb Everest or something.
Dude, you definitely look like that, yeah. Being out there, what's, just like making a YouTube video for me, there's a lot of stuff that people don't ever see. Um, and what is the most insane thing you think you've been a part of that no one will probably ever see? And you don't have to like say anything that's, not allowed to be talked about or anything, but like just something that like was just so insane it doesn't even seem real that you got out of it or something like that. Because I'm sure you get caught in heavy snowstorms, heavy, blizzards, maybe fog. Like I was just in Nome, and it would get so foggy and windy. The driver of the snow machine just would stop because he didn't know we were on top of a mountain, and if you went another inch, you could have just fell off a cliff because it would just be uh, 2 feet visibility, if that. So I'm sure you've been in some tough situations that no one's ever going to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some times where there's a lot of the documentary stuff or whatever it ends up being, but there's a lot of effort put into behind the scenes too. And some of it makes it out prior to the release of something, depending on the production company, and some of it's saved just for after for the like a yeah, full behind the scenes edit. But sometimes things go wrong and you just don't even want it in there. One year we were working on the sea ice, following polar bears, trying to capture a seal hunt, and we'd been traveling by snowmobile and comatics, which are these wooden trailers or toboggans with a box and all the gear in that. And as the season was progressing and it was getting later into spring, it was getting harder to use the comatics because it was just really rough conditions. And so the lodge we were working at had these great big ATVs called Sherps, and the tires were like shoulder high, and they can float on the water, supposedly. They can climb out of broken through ice. The tires inflate and deflate as you're driving if you want. But we headed out one day and we had bad luck with them. And so then kind of the boss showed up and decided to show us how to drive these things. And then he promptly got one stuck. And then he waved in the second one to come and pull them out, and it got stuck. And then I was in a snow machine for ultimate safety. and and then I had to pull both of them out with a snow machine, which wasn't ideal. Very small.
How the heck? Those things are huge. That's insane that
They're
even
huge.
could
Yeah,
work.
and so you've got, and it's kind of I mean, everyone's workplace can relate. When the boss is there, everything's higher stress and nothing goes perfect. And and
Yeah.
yeah, we had quite a few fails before it worked. And at one point, the fail was the entire tow line snapped and shot forward. And in an instant, I'm driving the snow machine, and my head just boom hits the dash, and it felt like someone hit me with a 2x4 across the back, and my entire down parka had been sliced shoulder, like from one shoulder down to my rib cage, tore all the way through the down parka, tore through the second parka underneath, tore through my wool base layer, and then cut my skin open. And it was all on behind the scenes footage.
Wow.
And yeah, right away the boss.
It's been recorded?
It was all recorded, but it's like,
Wow.
okay, that stuff better get
Wow.
deleted. We don't need to show that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's fun when things go wrong and there's like something you
Man.
can learn from it, but it's not fun when things go wrong and it's just your own fault for being in a rush or doing something you shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, that could have killed you if it
Yeah, for sure.
wanted to play its cards right.
I'm trying to think of some other good ones we've had. You've been there, the Hudson Bay coastline, and a little bit further north than where we were near Churchill. It becomes very even flatter than around Churchill, and the tidal flats are just very thick mud. And we've been out there before as the tide is rising. So very similar to Hallo Bay in Katmai, but muddy and clay and kind of sucking your rubber boot right off your foot. And we're trying to get back to shore as the tide's rising, and actually by then it was a trio, three polar bears, three big males, had been grappling over a beluga in the ocean as the tide was coming up, and the one of them had killed it and had started to swim to shore, and then two more swam in, and they were all playing with it and diving for it as it was sinking and trying to drag it to shore, as the tide was pulling it. Well, yeah, as the current was pulling it away from shore as the tide was coming up. And we were on this point in the mud, littered with beluga bones. So we knew where they were trying to pull the carcass to. And as the tide's coming up and the bears are coming in, and then some other bears are showing up from land side, we're trying to stay on high ground and we can barely walk. And a few times the cameraman is over the top of their rubber boot, is sinking into the mud and can't get anywhere. And then they're passing a big camera off their shoulder to you, and you're taking it forward and helping them crawl out, and it can get quite messy, and it just it looks pretty
Yeah.
silly from a distance.
One of the things that I hate about Hallo Bay is that mud. And like you said, when it sinks you in, it is so, it's kind of frustrating. Like I get real frustrated just because I just don't like that feeling of like getting stuck in the quicksand, I guess you can call it or whatever. But that reminds me, one time I was camping with Scott and we got delayed like a day because of weather. And then if we didn't get out that day, we would have been stuck there for like a week because the weather was just going to get really bad. And a pilot, Kodiak couldn't fly in because it was too foggy, but there was like another spot in Kodiak, another plane could take you that wasn't foggy. So a flight from Homer came in and picked us up, but they picked us up at
Wow.
low tide. Oh, Scott was so mad this day. They picked us up at low tide. You know, Hallow Bay's low tide. I mean, that's like a mile walk out there
Yeah.
and all of camp gear. So tons of 50-pound bags. And you're walking with those bags, and next thing you know, you're knee deep in that quicksand or mud. And it was the worst experience. And the tide was slowly coming in, and like we would end up leaving bags in the water, and then the tide would pick them up and start dragging. Dude, it was
Oh
so bad.
no.
The bags would start getting brought back in. It was like the worst experience I think I've ever seen. Man, Scott just every time you bring it up to him, he gets red in the face. He was mad that day. But yeah, it's just like one of those things, you know. I at that time I really wanted to get out because my daughter was just 3 months old at the time, and I really wanted to leave. But we were with another guy, and his excuse for wanting to leave was, I got to get back to Baltimore or Boston or something because I got to get an oil change. That was his excuse. So, but
Oh my
I wanted to go
goodness.
back to my daughter, so I wanted to get out as soon as I could. But
Yep, that seems like
other
a
than that, I
more
wouldn't mind
valid
staying there
reason.
for,
Yeah.
yeah. Is it?
Although Scott and
Yeah.
I can't remember who all was there, but Scott
Um,
got stranded there this summer once in bad weather. They didn't. I don't think they could get enough planes to get everyone out, so all the guests got out, and then Scott and a couple of the guides.
yeah, that was when we left. That was the
Yes,
day we left. That water was real choppy. Yeah, the one pilot from Kodiak picked us up, and his guest got picked up, and they said, "We're not coming back for you. It's too rough."
jeez.
Yeah, he had the camp all apart and all that gear. It's not super far, but it's far enough to bring 15, 20 loads of 50-pound bags. It's probably like a quarter of a mile, I'd imagine, right? Uh, yeah, that's tough. He just wanted to put a bear fence around there and just sleep on the beach instead of going back to set up camp again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how long when you're out there, and I'm sure the producer has a list of shots they want to get. Um, just like anything, you're not guaranteed to get them all, if any. Um, on average, though, how long would you say you're in a place um to get like the best shot or like the majority of the shots you're looking for? Would you say sometimes it's right away, sometimes it doesn't happen, or would you think there's an average if you just kind of stick it out? And I'm sure there's tons of research that always goes into these things. They're not just going in blind. So they do the behind the scenes work to make sure if it lines up, it's gonna work.
Yeah, that's interesting because like, yeah, you hit a lot of points there that are very interesting. We could talk almost on each one of those, but um, so I guess like whenever there's something being filmed, from my perspective, and I'm sure there's different ways of this happening, but somebody comes forward with an idea, or someone maybe way up at the top hears about something, and then they send off researchers to go and figure out if it's possible. And then like, does this thing happen that we think it does? Where does it happen? Where is the best chance of it happening? And then, yeah, like timing. But sometimes, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not just social media. It's wildlife documentaries. They can glorify behavior and make it seem like it's normal and it's everywhere, or they can make something that's happened once or very rarely sound like it's a regularly occurring thing. But I would say in general, the times where everything's been successful usually requires around 4 weeks to get anything.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a magic window, and I was telling this to somebody one time when we were doing, or this wasn't filming. This was just me on a trip, but I was photographing pumas in Chile with a friend there from Chile. And 8 to 10 days there was like a magic window. And in the Canadian North, 8 to 10 days as well seems like a magic window. Like if you're coming in as a photographer, like on a tour, you really need 8 to 10 days to even see something happen. Maybe that's weather patterns and having good lighting or the right conditions for the thing you're hoping to see, or it's the animal movements and behavior and resting and eating and that stuff. But so if you need 8 to 10 days to see something or have a good chance of being there for it, now if you need to be there and everything aligned to get captured on film, you might need 2 or 3 tries at it, or it might happen, but it might happen, but it happens in a very poor, not a very pretty location, let alone the lighting. Because really,
Right.
like behavior should kind of trump artistic shots in theory, but you're always striving to make it look as nice as possible. But we had one year, I think it was 5 weeks. It felt like 5 weeks. It could have been 6 even. But we had about a month where we did not see, the film crew did not see a polar bear for like 4 weeks. And we were trying to capture a polar bear hunting a seal. And we caught glimpses of polar bears in the distance. A few encounters that we had, close calls with polar bears, but we didn't get cameras on them. We actually had a helicopter team, and the helicopter ended up scaring them away, getting too eager, which isn't ideal.
Right.
But I actually like to chalk that whole thing up to just kind of bad vibes and bad karma.
Hey, just wanted to cut in here real quick. And if you're enjoying this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I will eventually be doing these podcasts live once I get a little more traction, as long as this video does really well. And I do want to say one more thing. If you do want to support me in other ways, I just reopened my Patreon account. So you can subscribe there and help me out a little bit so I can continue to make these videos. Patreon is a great way to support me so I can continue to make these videos and do more things with my photography.
And I don't know when we cut out. I was talking about how we had one shoot that was just terrible, kind of bad vibes, and we had like almost a month of no bears, which was not ideal. But then we had 2 shoots in a row one summer where they were going after very specific sequences, and we got both in just epic time. And it was just, I mean, Like I think we were like 8 days and we got the one sequence we needed, and then the other one was we were like 2 weeks or less or something, and we got everything we needed for that. And um, I don't think that's the norm, um,
Yeah.
but it happens. And there's like,
Yeah.
that was, you could maybe chalk it up to like picking right time of year and really narrowing the window of like exactly what we were wanting. Um, but ultimately, we just did get lucky.
Yeah. Well, it's just like last year was first time I ever seen cubs on a mom's back, and that
Yeah.
mom kept doing it. And you probably know, like, some moms just don't want their cubs on their back, and it's not as common as people think, because when people post a photo or Nat Geo shares a video of it, people think, "Oh, I'm gonna go see that," and it just doesn't happen that much.
Oh, for sure. And now it's funny because I'll see your photos. Like I can't remember what the photography or Alaska magazine was, but like you've got that great shot of the cubs on the mom's back out on the water
Hmm.
as the tide was coming up. But I mean, like I know I think I've seen Jen share a similar
Jen has
photo.
Jen has something like that, but with the mom looking at a wolf. They were looking at each other. I'm like, what the heck? And there was like
Oh, no
three
way.
cubs on the mom's back, and they were with next to a wolf. It was insane. But they weren't in the water. The water
Oh,
was
okay.
unique because it was like kind of glassy water.
Yeah,
So
the
it
lighting was
was
unreal. Like,
yeah, yeah. At the time I thought the lighting was a little bit harsh, but it was a little tricky to edit too. But it actually was nice, and I really like how the videos and the photos turned out for that. Man, I'll tell you one thing, my heart was racing for those Cubs in that moment. And it's like one of those things you gotta just let nature play its course.
well, and it was interesting to compare that day. Like, and that one just stands out to me. Like yeah, like that morning and the lighting conditions and how silky smooth the water was. Like everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Like a month and a half later, the Cubs are now older. They were given more leeway and they're venturing further from mom. But it was a windy, choppier day and they were at the river mouth, hoping to catch fish. And the mom was lingering coming in to shore. And one or two of the Cubs, I can't remember, but they did not get on mom's back and she did not wait for them. And at one point,
Right.
we all thought, like, we expected the one to get washed away and,
Yeah.
a bit of a disaster. And in the end, it ended up, eventually catching her and everything. But it was kind of neat to compare those two moments. Like, and the photos of that second time, like, they're not very nice at all. Like, it's kind of gross, choppy water. There's incoming tide and outgoing river current. And so it just, it just didn't look nice. And it was windy
Right.
but uh but a neat from the wildlife behavior standpoint to see like, okay, the mom doesn't need to baby them anymore. She wasn't picking the cub up and carrying it anymore.
Dude, that was another thing that mom was doing. She just kept picking that. I don't know if it was the same cub or just she just would pick one up and just throw it to the other side of her just for fun or something. I don't know what she was trying to accomplish there.
No, and a few of the times, the time I remember it in the sedge meadows, there was a few times where the mom would pick up a cub and it was almost like she was just OCD, just wasn't even tossing it. She would just pick it up and reposition it. Like, I want you on this side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was
And
yeah.
uh and it just looked funny, like the way that little cub like kind of hung limp like this, and
Yeah, they walked right up to us one time and did that, and I had it was it, you know I was only had my 400, and I think I had my 7200, but I was shooting with my 400, and they got so close that I couldn't even like track it in real time, because I was also trying to like watch, the mom,
yeah.
like they were literally walking within a foot from us, and then Jen had to just kind of stand up and just say, why don't we just go that way a little bit? And she did. Like, it's pretty not I don't want to say easy, but it doesn't take much to just have a bear change of direction, just to keep both comfort levels, especially when the Rangers are out there too. Just you want to show that you're doing the right thing to.
Yeah.
So, um, so I brought up the how long it takes to do a shoot and everything. Because I want to know, like, when a producer can't get like a certain shot they want, do they do anything to like fill gaps? Do they use old footage? Do they just kind of scrap some things? And that'll lead to the next thing, which I know you're talking about, which is whole reason I have you on. But um, what have you seen like when there's just like one or two shots where that's what you want, but you just haven't gotten it yet?
Well, and it's interesting. So yeah, comparing over the like, I haven't worked on that many, but over the years, comparing a few different shoots, and some of them are, or a couple of them are still not even released yet. And so I'm just dying to see the cuts. And then I think of some of them, and some of them are just, from my perspective, just really poorly cut together. And I want to even think that a layman watching the footage would be able to tell that it's a different environment, or maybe even a different bear. Like, most people can pretty quickly pick up on different personalities in bears and their facial features. And, you know, that bear looks soft and like inviting or cuddly or whatever you want to say. And that one looks mean, and maybe it's got scars and it looks rough. And I've seen it where, one production company, it was their first commission, big commission. You know, they're trying to go huge, and they've got a whole storyline, and they've added character names to the bears, which was horribly cheesy because the bears' names were basically Arctus, which is, Greek or whatever. I think Greek for bear. I can't remember if it's
Yeah,
Greek or Roman or Latin. And then the other one was Nanook, which is another, is the traditional name of a polar
native.
bear.
Yeah,
And,
yep.
and then I can't remember what the third bear name was. It was basically bear in another language. I'm just going like, oh my goodness, who wrote this? Like,
Yeah.
it's bear, bear, and
I
bear.
I think one thing that Scott is really good. Scott and Jen are really good at picking out names for bears, and sometimes they choose like a different name for the same bear or something. But overall, we all know each bear out there, and they all have a name. And then it's interesting, like you guys were there, and you guys made your own names, and you called it like Kevin or something,
Yeah, well,
and
I
we
mean,
were
and
like,
I
no.
I wasn't in, I was not involved in the naming of bears. I'll admit I secretly like names on bears, and I like them when they've got a funny story to them.
Yep, yep.
But I also, so I secretly like naming bears, or like naming animals or giving them names for fun. But on the surface, professionally, I hate names. And as a guide or anything, I think naming them is bad. Um,
I agree with both of those things because,
yeah, and so
like
it's
you
like,
said,
it's my guilty little pleasure inside that I do actually enjoy the names, but I will never admit it in like real life, out of sight.
yeah,
Um,
a couple years ago, there was a mom that had four cubs, and she lost three of them to a boar, and only one, or I forget. I want to say it was four, and she lost three, but I might be mixing two because there's so many that get killed over the years, but only one of the cubs survived, and they ended up naming the bear Forrest because that only reason that bear survived because it just kept running, and they're like, Jennifer was like, "Oh, run, Forrest, run," which it's got a great story behind it, and we didn't see the bear last year, which made us kind of sad, or the mom, so we don't know what happened. But it was also a good bear year, so maybe they just hung out in the bushes and whatnot. But um, yeah, I agree. And then like it's so funny hearing like someone else say like, yeah, we're gonna go over here to, Jimmy, right? Like, it's just like, come on, buddy. Like, why don't you just be a little more professional, like you were just saying? It's just like weird when you hear other people say it, I think, or if they're
Absolutely.
in front of clients, I guess I should say.
Well, and I remember, like, to my point, I remember at Hallo Bay, a different guide that was out there. and they came back from a walk with their guests, and they had gone all the way to the south end or whatever, and they came back and they're like, yeah, there's another mom and she's got 3 cubs too. And we're going, like, we've been here maybe 10 days or 12 days, or I can't remember, but, and we were out there like all day long, and we were roaming around looking, and no one else had seen another mom and cubs. And we're thinking, you know, it just seemed like, are you sure you didn't just walk, almost like walk in a circle and see the same mom again? Or she
Right.
moved when you moved. But this guide came back and was just adamant there was a new mom and cubs, and I mean they never got seen all the whole rest of the season. And so, that person could have been right. Maybe we just never, nobody else ever saw them. But
They just happen to
also,
be passing through at that moment and going to a different bay or something. But
yeah,
yeah,
it's possible. But like, um, yeah, but they also, that other mom also was a blonde with a dark eyes. And it's like, okay, this is too many similarities, maybe.
yeah, yeah.
But but yeah, I'm pretty against the naming of bears. Although, like, if it's if we need to give one a name because of a behavior, just so we could describe them, like, effectively as a guide, or just people out there talking about the animals, I think that's a bit different. But
Yeah.
like, oh, that one's missing a right ear, or that one's got spectacles. Those names make more sense to me. But when we start to like get beyond that, then I like silently have a little groan in my back of my head. And
Yeah, yeah. And like, see, the reason I like, Scott and Jennifer's name for their bears is
yeah,
those people essentially live there. They know those bears better than anyone. They know that landscape better than anyone. They've been doing it for so long. And they're not just a random name. Like every bear name has a story. So that's
yeah,
one thing I like about them, and it's just one of those things that like it sounds like we're contradicting ourselves.
no,
Until you know,
yeah.
you know.
But even I remember a time where, yeah, like the local expert, like the Scott and Jackie that, or the Jen, the people that were there all the time. Those people had kind of working names that they used. And so, we hear them and we're like, okay, well, we don't need to use those. There's no reason to yet. And it was, we didn't need to use them as identifiers. And then all of a sudden, someone else that was fairly new on the scene, like brand new to the location, all of a sudden starts nicknaming everything. And then the phrases and or like the conversation, oh, that bear's being such a Timmy, like what a little Timmy thing to do.
Right.
And then within minutes, they're like, wait a second, which one's Timmy? I thought that one was Timmy. No, it's that one. Isn't that Timmy? And you just go, I thought you
Yep.
named it because it was so
They
obvious.
they
And
will
you're just
never
like,
mistake once that bear has a
no.
name. Yeah. And they are not naming a bear the first time they see it, unless it's something super distinctive or whatnot.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, they are with it so much, and they wait for that moment to define that bear's name, which is, I guess that's what gives it the name. It's
for
not just,
sure. And I mean, I do know as a guide, like it's helpful to do that kind of thing, but it's just, um, yeah, everyone's got their different style. And I know some places that I've worked, the mantra from management is do not use names, because we don't want to either build up the stigma that they're like tame in a sense, or like they're reliable, or they're a given.
right, right.
Because the second
Because
you go, oh, that's so and so, it makes it, to someone who this might be their first or once in a lifetime trip, it might water it down the experience, or set expectations too high, right? Like, oh, Scott and Jackie have been talking and posting photos all summer of so and so, and then they get there and that bear's gone, and they're just kind of like heartbroken a
yep.
little bit.
And I was just gonna say, like, that's actually a perfect way to say it, because when I saw you in Churchill and stuff, if you were telling me like, oh, here comes like Scarface's, that would be self-explanatory, I'd imagine, but like here
No, that
comes
actually, like, okay, you finish, then I'll come back to Scarface.
uh but like here comes Billy, um I'd be like, oh, what about him? But if you said, the one time you said, here comes this bear, but they're coming from the dump, and like I know what they're gonna do. See, I felt more like, so, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it gave me like God, what word am I trying to say? It felt more like relaxed, I'd say, knowing like what the bear is gonna do versus you just saying, "Here comes Timmy. He's just gonna walk right up to you. Just let him
Yeah.
be and whatnot." It's hard to put in words, I guess, but I guess when I'm in the new situation, I'd rather just kind of know about the bear's behavior than worry about the bear's name.
Well, and that like over the years, we ran into a bear one year, and it was a polar bear, and it was at least 3 years old, kind of thing. But so it's on its own. It's 3 years old, and it comes strolling right up to our camp, and it's only got 3 legs. And so right away, I mean, and there's only three of us working together, and we're all pretty making jokes all the time. And so, I mean, when you see a three-legged animal, there's only a couple, to me, nicknames that should come to mind right away. Like, and I can't remember who said what first, but like you've got tripod, or you've got stumpy. I don't know what else, but or like something to do with hopping around, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
so anyways, that's what, I can't remember which one we said, but that was what we went with. I think we said tripod, or stump. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. Well, then a week or two later, one of our shots gets shown to someone else, and that person's just pure ego. And, oh, that's Hercules. And I just go like, what? Okay, like my sense of humor is going, where did that come from? Like, there's an obvious nickname. It's like if you have a bear that has a scar on its face, it's Scarface, not Daisy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
It
There
could be
actually is a
eating.
bear named Daisy, and
Yeah, for sure.
yes, there's a Scott named the bear Daisy, and it was actually the first time I saw Koi a couple years ago. And man, that bear Daisy, she's got like, I don't know where the name Daisy came from, but she's got like this dent in her forehead, and she is the most distinctive bear I think I've ever seen, just because that dent is just so deep. I don't know what happened as
Huh.
a cub
Interesting.
or whatnot, but yeah, she's pretty distinctive. That's just funny. You said Daisy. That's how I brought
Well,
that
and
up.
so back to Scarface as an example too, because I think the people that get to give them character names like Run Forest or something like that, or what was it, Shelley, right? At Hallow, because she liked to eat. She specifically was probably the bear that dug the most, and it's the Shelikoff Strait. There's so many cool like innuendos there.
Yep. Yep.
To me, it's like, oh, perfect, classic, like good name. But so in Canada, in Hudson Bay, we've got this Scarbrow, and so it's got a scar down its forehead, and it's also missing like the majority of one of its ears, and it's a huge male. And the guy that named it that, he's seen it for over 20 years. He might have even seen it for 25 years. I can't remember, but it's,
Right.
it started with the scar. Eventually it lost an ear. But a couple summers ago, I'm up there working, and we spot this massive bear on the beach. Try to get in close with a Zodiac. It happens to look up at us eventually. Get a shot, and sure enough, scar down its forehead, missing an ear. And so the first thing I'm excited to do at the end of the day is send a text message to my buddy and go, hey Terry, like check this out. I think Scarbrow's returned. And right away he goes, no, that's not Scarbrow. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's got a scar on its forehead and it's missing an ear.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, well, is that the real photo, or have you done anything to it? And I said, no, that's exactly the photo. He goes, wrong ear.
Wow.
So his Scarbrow was the left ear missing, and I saw a right ear missing. And I'm thinking to myself, what are the odds?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of back to like why I think the nicknames sometimes can be goofy, because we can think we know a bear, and then all of a sudden we see another one that looks identical, or like last summer when the mom with her 3 koi, when she lost the 1 koi, and then we didn't see them for a full day and a half, and we were searching and searching and searching. And then all of a sudden we find a mom with 2. and we're looking at them and we go, that's not her, that's not her, and we could
Yeah.
convince ourselves it wasn't her. Um, and it was just actually she was wet and she was a bit dirty from rooting around in the kelp, and the cubs were just acting different, and they were also different lighting, maybe dirty, who knows. They had been up in the Devil's Club or whatever a lot too,
Hmm.
going for salmon berries, and so they were just really dirty. And then the next day we find them with their third cub, and we all just kind of giggled to ourselves, like, how did we possibly think that wasn't her?
Yeah. Yep.
And we had just spent 50 days with her, you know.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
But
And then, well, especially when you watch them grow, like they've gained so much weight in those 50 days, but you see them every day, and then you go a couple days without seeing them. It really is easy to think it's something else. Like, or you look at it for so long, you convince yourself it's a different bear, even though it's not.
for sure.
All right, let's talk about the most popular thing in today's world and AI. And when I met you in Hallo Bay, you brought up a scenario that I thought no way that would ever happen. Do you believe that Nat Geo or BBC, these production crews, are going to use AI video because it has gotten pretty good in some scenarios, depending on, you know, the professionalism of something, to fill in some shots of wildlife?
Well, yeah, and it's super interesting. So, and I don't want to take credit for all of my ideas because most of them are from discussing with a friend who's very involved with AI. He's a Canadian filmmaker, has a production company. We work together on wildlife documentaries, and a super good friend. His name's Chris Petco. Um, Always Build Studios, and he actually did a talk on AI last about a year ago at Wildscreen, and so coming from some of the stuff I've talked about or mentioned, one of the best shoots we had where we got a sequence we needed in under 2 weeks, and it was like we needed flowers, the right type of flower in bloom, we needed a bear there, we needed some other wildlife there, we needed good lighting, we needed all these things, and they all happened. But it took us 2 weeks, and we lived there on site, camped out there and everything. Chris traveled in a year or so later and spent 18 hours on site and captured all the same stuff essentially. He got the
Uh-huh.
same sequence, he got the same everything. And I think it was within 24 hours of the on scene being done, he used AI for producing the clip and putting together a reel. And he put together, I think it's about 5 or 7 minute long. And he used AI not to produce footage, but to put it all together and to narrate it.
Okay.
And so I think there's two aspects of AI. One is to put everything together, and one of them is to create shots. So I think,
I
speaking
agree.
of,
One could be a tool, and one is just generation. And I think a lot of people know my stance. I'm pretty anti AI. Um, I tried not to use something like ChatGPT or whatnot,
yeah,
but honestly, when you have a bunch of ideas and you just kind of like, I get scatterbrained. If you just type them in your notes or something, and then you just say like, just organize this in a way that I can read it and understand it better, or put together like a short script. I'm not going to read the script word for word because I can spot an AI script and I can hear an AI script in a YouTube video or whatnot. But it's just nice to like, I really like the plot, the organization of a plot, and which way to go. But I'm totally against the AI generation of things, especially when it's not disclosed. And I think if, Nat Geo or whoever does incorporate AI, whether it's AI voiceover or because, Morgan Freeman and David Attenborough are probably going to pass away pretty soon. I think today
yeah,
was David Attenborough's birthday.
yeah,
Um, but will they use their voices? Will they disclose it that this is not pre-recorded? This is artificial intelligence. Um, I think they would. I think to not lose any credibility as a company or an organization, I think they would definitely have to. Um, but do you see them using an actual AI generated clip
Yeah.
of a, like, especially if they can make it look like it's the same bear? Like you were saying earlier, you can tell when a bear has a different face or whatnot, but if the AI generated clip can keep exact all the features, because you have the footage and you say you have 360 angles and every possible lighting condition, but you just couldn't get it to do that certain thing, and AI can make it flawless. You can see
Yeah.
them using it in the future.
I think they can, and I think there's a couple. Well, so right now, if you think about it, and my experience from being on some shoots and seeing the final product, but there's definitely like there's it's not quality, but there's different calibers, I guess, of production companies or of productions, and it's all depending on the end client and what they want. But there's some that will only use footage from their shoot, and there's some that will happily use stock images and footage and supplement. And
Right.
that's just a level of professionalism. And those companies, those production companies, for maybe all productions or just for certain productions to a client, are selling on that level of professionalism. Like all of this is real in situ sort of thing. Or even to the extent of this entire, feature length documentary is the same bear throughout. There will be no, like, it's signed in the contract, like as a clause.
Right. Right.
That's the level of accuracy, I guess, in a sense, that's being touted. And I think there's lots to that. And I think as a wildlife person, as an outdoor person, you see how challenging that is, because you could be filming a mother and her cubs this year, and you could go back to get them growing up and they could be dead, or they could just
Yeah.
migrate and you'll never see them again, or you know or the next year you see them and they just don't do anything you want them to do for the
Yeah.
storyline. And it does take a creative team, like producers and directors, to change storylines as they see footage. And we've had to do that in real life on a shoot, where we're on conference calls during the shoot, calling the president of a company, saying this storyline we were sold is not working, to the point of like, we were lied to, this isn't going to happen.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Here, what is happening though, and what is happening is actually pretty cool, and here's the storyline and the theme. And we've pitched that, and we've had like game time decisions made and said, okay, we're happy with the facts that were presented. We're disappointed, of course, that we can't do plan A, but plan B sounds phenomenal, run with it. And that's what's
Yeah.
happened. But so right now, I think it's pretty much universal. We know that stock footage gets used. And it gets used because it's cheaper than going back and sending the entire production team back again. It's cheaper, and that's not just financial. That's just logistical effort. It's simpler than
Yeah.
mobilizing
I
everybody
mean,
and sending them back
you
in.
see what it takes to just get a crew.
Yeah,
Even if you just bring a Canon R5 and a 100 to 500 lens, like, to get in some of these locations is already too much logistic wise.
for sure. And so I'm trying to keep my thoughts coordinated here because there's so many angles
I
on
know
this.
it could literally go on for years I think it
Yeah,
will go on for years talking about this kind of stuff.
it will. But so right now, I think for me, it boils down to almost every single person that watches this stuff. Like, let's say the majority, or at least 50% of the people that watch an end wildlife production, can probably tell that there's been some stuff spliced together. You know, you watch like the My Octopus or the My Octopus Teacher, and it's just like very different looking octopuses in lots of different scenes, and it
Yeah.
and not just it mimicking and changing colors, but you know, it's just, you know, an octopus lives for one season. You can't film it over multiple years
Yeah.
to go back and fill in footage. But so to me, if you're watching something and like let's take Hallo Bay for an example. So you've got bears back in, and let's think about like salmon season, the run. So you've got bears back in the meadows and they're feeding on grasses. And then as the tide is coming in and the fish can now swim up the river, those bears are now going to, you know, migrate over the beach ridge and then head out to the riverlets and start fishing. So you put in all the effort and you're being respectful to the wildlife, keeping some distance, not cutting them off, not making a commotion, packing everything up instantaneously while it's like still right beside you. But you've got good footage of bears feeding on grass. You've got good footage of bears walking through grass. And then you've got bears fishing, bears clamming, bears walking on tidal flats and retreating from the incoming tide. But what you've never gotten is bears emerging out of like the grasses into the driftwood.
Yeah.
And all you actually want is that what might be 4 seconds of a segue showing bridging the two environments. Like, how did they get from the grass to the beach? Well, they emerged. And we get that in the Churchill area on Hudson Bay all the time, because there's a lot of vegetation there, which is unique for polar bears. It's one of the most unique populations of polar bears in the world. But you get bears on the ocean, bears on the ice, and you want to see the bears coming out of the willow bushes, almost like the gorillas in the jungle appearing through the foliage.
Real quick, just literally watching those bears in that environment in Churchill is, I mean, just I remember just looking at the bears on the rocks or walking next to those trees up on that hill, and I'm just like, this is insane. Like, they're not polar bears, they're black bears that just have been dyed white, because that is not normal. It's just crazy. It's like, just, it's insane how a real life experience won't even feel real. Even looking back, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it just, I understand why it works, because you explain like Churchill is one of the first places to get sea ice so they can get hunting again. And that, it makes sense. It was 80, that one day it was 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And just insane.
Well, I think, I can't remember if I probably told this story on the beach in that heat, but really quickly, like, we had one year where we were setting up a time lapse and we had everything geared up and the boat was anchored in this tidal zone, kind of marooned in a back lagoon, couldn't get out because of the low water. We've all waded into shore from the boat on anchor, set up all the tripods, got everything set, and now all of a sudden this big male bear comes walking up to us, and we're standing our ground, keeping it away from the camera gear. And there's maybe 4 of us. And we stand our ground. We had never really had the chance to have a bear talk yet about like being on the ground with them, because we were always in a boat. And so, and there's just a time and place for it. And it wasn't then. I said, everyone's just got to kind of do this, but listen to me for instructions. You got to follow them no matter what. So everybody trusts me. But anyways, the bear encounter's over. I turn back and I look at the crew I'm with. I'm in a t-shirt and shorts and no shoes, because it's beach sand.
Yeah.
And then beside me is a friend and coworker standing there in like a swimsuit.
Yeah.
And they look at me and they go, I never thought I'd have my first close-up encounter with a polar bear in a bikini.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, that's insane.
And like, yeah, for real. This is real life. But so for me, like, though, from being there on these different shoots and seeing how you can be incredibly dedicated, put in tons of hours, and just, you know, nose to the grindstone, but sometimes it's just impossible to predict those little segues. And the storyline of a documentary or whatever you call it, a production, is um, really needs those. Those are good. It's not just filler, but it really adds the story. It helps people who don't know the environment understand
Yeah.
those transitions. And
Well, and that's what makes a documentary a documentary is the storyline. It's not just a montage of clips. Like it's the storyline, and
yeah,
like it would be even like when I edit a YouTube video, it's just if I forget to do a time lapse like before I go to bed or something, it's just like it's weird. Next day it's one day it's sunny and then all of a sudden I'm talking to you in the rain. It's like, well, what happened?
yeah.
But on a wildlife scale of things,
Um, but yeah, so right now it's pretty socially acceptable to throw in, or industry acceptable to throw in stock images, stock footage to like bridge those little gaps,
Yeah,
or you've got a bear walking, but now you want a close up on its feet, or you want a close up on its mouth while it's eating, or a close up of that stare. And we all the time jump to stock footage because,
right.
maybe we just watched a polar bear kill a seal, kill a whale, um, come out from a swim, but now we want that head-on shot of it shaking the water off, or we want that pulling some flesh, or just whatever. We can't be everywhere at once, so that's where that stock stuff comes in. If it's done really well, it doesn't jump out to you, and even maybe as like a photographer, someone behind a lens all the time, a wildlife person, maybe even for you it's hard to depict it as a different shot. But probably if you magnifying glass and fine tooth comb, you'd figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say, and it's from what I heard my friend Chris said when he did his talk in person, like the question period was crazy about it, and the ethics of it. But I think we're doing it already, and so I think there's the argument against AI is twofold. One is AI is dangerous in the sense that it could just replace people, like that. You see it online, all the kind of garbage content that's fake,
Yeah, yeah.
and there's that, but then there's also doing it well to supplement. And I think,
Yeah, and I just want to say like I I really don't like the AI video and photo generation, but I do also believe there is, no matter what, a difference if Nat Geo does it and
yeah,
someone that's sitting in their mom's basement that's never even seen a bear in real life. Those are the people that really drive me nuts because some of those people are posting content and they're getting paid for it. And I think you shouldn't be getting paid for AI stuff, especially if it's not disclosed. But in general, if you didn't like do anything besides type in a prompt, you shouldn't be getting monetized for that. And I think that would weed out a lot of AI. There's still a lot of people that are just bored and they don't have a life and they want to just make some funny videos and whatnot. Because you and I send us some stupid videos to each other once in a while, and
it
some of it's
happens. Yeah.
so bad that it's kind of funny. But um, yeah, it's those people that try to pass it off as their own work or they're really important in life when it's just like you're just a nobody and you'll die a nobody. And I don't, it sounds so harsh, but they don't try. They don't put any effort in. And yeah, that's my thought.
Well,
It's
and I
it
think
could be
I
bad,
think,
but it could be really bad.
but I think people need to too. Like, I mean, social media is such a weird thing, but media is a weird thing. And I mean, I grew up in a house in a family where an uncle had a National Geographic collection that was like bookshelves and bookshelves. Like it was the whole basement wall, floor to ceiling. And to me, National Geographic as a kid was basically an encyclopedia, but better. It was a learning resource and it was exploring the world and learning. And now I realize National Geographic is actually a travel company, you know, because I've worked in an industry where they're a direct competitor and they're simply a travel agency. And You
Right.
start looking at their magazines and you realize it. And they're promoting travel writers. You can brand yourself as their signature experience, and you can get authorized to use their logo as a company. And I'm saying this with like a very heavy bias or slant, but it's just to question it. Like, is National Geographic what people should put up there as like, whoa, your photos are Nat Geo quality.
Right.
What does that even mean anymore? Like, that meant a lot to me 40 years ago, 20 years ago, but now I go, there's Nat Geo photographers that are recycling the same image every season.
Yeah.
And when was that image taken? Over a decade ago.
Yeah.
And to me, that bugs me, because I just go, I had huge respect for this person and what they do and the adventures they're on and then what they capture. And then because I've been following them on Instagram or whatever, I see the same stuff just regurgitated. And it's not new, and it's not creative, and these people aren't actually living the adventure I thought they were. They're just a corporation churning out money.
Yeah. I think it's like even like a music artist, like it makes sense. Like, you don't just release something one time and just say, here's my new song, and never post about it again.
Yeah.
But are you only posting your old song and never making anything new?
Yeah,
or never
especially
trying
when you're
to
like
innovate or recreate anything.
But so back to the AI stuff though, I think so if we could admit that it's just and I think it's fair to say that it's just cost prohibitive, we can't make productions, we can't make every content or completely, or possible without subsidizing it, like with some filler. So, and that might mean, in a perfect world, that might mean getting shots from someone else that's been to the exact same place at a different time, or maybe the same time, but different people. But given the option of, so you watch something and you assume that it's all real, and the credits don't tell you that X amount of the footage was supplemented from somewhere else that isn't contextualized, to that story.
Yeah.
It's not already, like, that's true. No one tells you that there's supplemental footage. Yeah.
You can keep talking. My battery died in my camera, but you can keep talking.
Okay, but I was going to say it's an assumption, and I think it's a fair assumption to want to make, but it's just not the truth. But so then your second option, given the power of AI, is if all you're looking to do is create these filler sequences or bridges, you can take all the footage you've got of your real subject, your real environment, and you can generate the sequence you need, the behavior you need. And I think if it's truly just, and I hate saying filler, but that's what it is. But it can be good quality. But if all you're doing is creating those segues and those transitions, I think it's actually being more true
than buying stock footage.
Yeah, and so should you have to declare it? No one's declaring that they're using stock footage. So there's no basis that you should have to. Although I do think, especially with like the higher caliber production companies, I think, they won't go to any length to hide it, and they may even theoretically like maybe make it more prominent in the credits that that some stuff has been generated. And I think like a goal in my mind would be you put a cap on the percentage, but that means that there's some sort of standards, and there aren't. Like, there isn't an industry standard like, oh, you're a wildlife film, you now are classified in this, you can only use 10% stock footage or 10% AI generated or whatever. But from the true to real life, I think there's an argument to be made that AI can be more true to real life because it's your real subject. It's just
Yeah.
a conglomerate of all your own footage that's created this new sequence. Um, but then there's the whole second end of things, which is the ethics of it in terms of environmental impact, and that's like physically, like let's say our footprint, ecological footprint of producing a film, but also the impact on the wildlife. And you mentioned this to
Yeah.
me when we were talking too. Like, is it, if you really, really, really want footage of you know, birds in their nest, or like a bear in its den, or a sensitive, a sensitive moment or something like that. Should we really be there with the production crew,
Right.
imposing
Right.
ourselves, like creating an impact, or should we? Is it better for the environment that we don't cause a human impact on those animals, and we don't cause an
Yeah.
ecological impact of flying around the world with all this production gear just to capture 10 seconds of something, right?
Yeah. Because I mean, you can draw just bringing that up, flying around the world. Like, is it using less resources to generate a 4-second AI clip than it is to travel an entire film crew with a, a jet and then a float plane and then like if people really want to dive into the ethical, ecological thing, like maybe it's could save the carbon footprint over time.
Yeah.
I think it's ridiculous, like what's going on with Utah right now is the residents are saying we don't want a data center here, and they said, well, it
Mm,
got approved. Like
yeah.
I still believe the people should have the right. You're in Canada, but I'm sure like you still have some kind of like basic understanding of just like the people should have the right over the
Absolutely.
government.
I
So
mean, we're
that
communists, but not that much, Chris. Come on. Yeah.
yeah, right. But yeah,
Um,
let
but
that
I
freedom
think,
ring, right?
yeah, um, but, oh shoot, what was I going to say there? Um, yeah, I mean, like, to me, the environmental impact and the ethics on the wildlife, those are all interesting, but I think my values align in the sense that, like, I know that when we're in Hallo Bay, or I know when I'm in the north of Canada, on the like feet on the ground with a polar bear, we are having an impact on that animal.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I easily, I mean, yeah, my own ethics are, we're part of that same environment. Everything has an impact on each other. A wolf that strolls down the beach has an impact on those bears.
right.
A moose that runs through the field has an impact. Maybe not a negative one that we see, but um, so to remove ourselves from the environment isn't really like accurate. We are part of the environment, but
Yeah,
and then
like
from like our carbon emission standpoint, I think there's a big enough benefit that we educate people, share experiences, and create that like relationship with the natural environment, that then people value it more. So I think it'll always outweigh, you know, the fossil fuels that are burnt to go and do these things, or the
right.
garbage we produce or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I, but
dude,
I,
just it's some of the garbage just you could be in the middle of nowhere and there's just like on a beach and there's just
oh,
garbage that came from China or whatnot. And it's
yeah, we
just
were we were hauling
it's
back garbage
disturbing.
like every day in Hallo Bay. Like every time I walked back, I was picking up garbage, and like the park rangers are walking by me with barely a backpack on, and they're empty hands, and I'm carrying 80 pounds, and I'm squatting to
Yeah.
pick up one more pop bottle, and I'm they're like, "What are
Yeah.
you doing?" I go, "Your job."
Right. Yeah, it's bad. And then like I've seen bears play with a paint can and they like Jennifer showed me one like a bear had a yellow face because it got sprayed with a
Oh,
um, spray paint can. Um, so yeah, but like you said, even if we weren't there, wildlife is still being impacted, and I don't
yeah.
think, yeah,
Well, and I watched a guide one time with a film crew uh, in a boat trying to get closer to film some bears feeding. and they were just so unaware and focused, and they got so close that their aluminum hull boat banged into the rocks of shore, and the bears are standing ankle deep on shore, so they're, close proximity. And this is a big aluminum boat, and it clanged into shore, and all the bears looked up, and there's a multiple mums and cubs, and like kois and cubs and 3-year-olds. The kois were startled and the mums were startled because
Yeah.
they're already around these large males and adolescent males. And I go, was it necessary for us to get that 50 to 1,000 millimeter camera that close to that scene?
Yeah.
And in that situation, I think I would say no, it wasn't necessary like that, or because the the guy driving the boat wasn't paying good enough attention. Like,
Yeah, it's funny. I just want to say real quick, the last 2 times I had like my allergies have gotten bad, and I've had this cough, and when I've been in Katmai camping, and I can't stand it hearing myself cough and whatnot. But I found that bears do not react at all. They won't even look at me when I cough. Like, it doesn't affect them. And
it's kind of like
maybe
their huff almost.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
almost like they almost like know like it's not a threat, and they've heard people cough before, I guess. But yeah, I always thought that was weird because I thought, oh man, if I have a cough and I'm out with bears, like they're gonna get scared. But yeah, I've noticed like they didn't run. But when they hear a foreign sound, like a bang from a boat clashing on a rock, and
Yeah.
why are they driving up those rivers anyway, in Hallo Bay anyway? Like, why are the boats allowed to go up the river? Anyway, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So
Like different sounds are different. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, so
Um,
you just to confirm, like you as a person are okay with it, as okay if AI just uses transitional scenes, and it's as long as it doesn't get to a point where it's like, let's do a whole month's worth of work in AI instead of sending a film crew out. You're more like, yeah, it's okay to get that transition scene that you didn't record or just never happened in front of you, kind of moment.
yeah, I think absolutely my ethics align that if all you're doing is creating supplementary shots, you're not the main focus, you're not the main behavior. I think it's just wrong in what I am looking to watch myself. I want to watch real wildlife, real environment, natural settings, and I'm okay with knowing that the kind of atmospheric shots may have been composed using AI or
Yeah.
whatever might be necessary. Um, because I think it's not detracting from the true story and the true highlights. But I can also admit that there's no governing framework for that. There's no set rules on what's allowed, what's not, or what you have to admit to, or what you don't have to. Um, I in my own photography, I know I've maybe got the absolute photo I want, and there happens to be a like I might be in an agricultural area and I've got the exact animal I'm looking for, but there's a barbed wire fence in the background, and
Mm-hmm.
I just go like, oh man, everything here is beautiful, but that fence just like
Yeah.
I can't control that. That's where the wildlife was. It's true. It's the real scene, and but I have no problem in my photos editing out that
Right.
because and whereas some people wouldn't even do that. But I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But then I wouldn't
Well,
go
that's
so
when
far
you
as
like,
to.
photography is an art, and I think we're all allowed to, people act like they didn't like used to change highlights back in the day, or manipulate shadows and stuff, just because, like I hate when people say, have you ever heard someone say, I shoot raw but don't edit my photos? Like, you're
Yeah,
an idiot for shooting raw then, because raw's not even the actual colors you were seeing, it's completely unsaturated and whatnot.
Yeah,
But
and you
that's
see their
just,
photo and it actually has saturation, and then you realize they're just straightforward lying because
yeah, that too.
they
Yep,
did
yep.
edit it. Yeah. Um, but if I think about like I haven't seen the footage yet, but I heard there's a production that got a special permit to have footage of a bear's den inside the den,
Oh, wow.
and I would say ethically, like I don't think we should be. That's pretty sensitive, I guess. Like, it's stressful. We can,
Yeah.
the bear's in a weird metabolic rate. It's got young, its energy supply. Do we need to be doing that? Even if there's very slim chances, is it worth it? So there's certain things that I'm okay with never seeing in film. Um, and if a production wanted to include that, and the narration even said something along the lines like, you've got a shot of the bears emerging from the den and they're coming out, and then your narration goes, and just a few months before, down in the den, this is what it could have looked like. And even if the wording was as simple as that,
Yeah.
it doesn't need like a disclaimer. It doesn't need to say generated. But if it just is like a dream scene in a movie or something, like
Yeah. I agree. There is no reason to put a stress on an animal for the
no,
shot. Like, it's never, they always say that it's never worth stressing out an animal for the shot. And people do it. And, like, uh, I think I found out one thing. I'm more against baiting an animal for a photo or video than I am
yeah,
generating. And I've kind of eased up on my AI hatred. I like just really hated it for the longest time, and I'm kind of just like, it is a tool that can be used ethically and ecologically. Is it the you just go down a rabbit hole of goods
for sure,
and bads, but stressing out an animal is not worth it. Giving an animal a food that's not naturally supposed to be there, or now they're relying on it. They say like every fox that someone feeds here in Kodiak is going to get trapped and killed just because you're just training it
yeah,
to, like, they're not losing. I don't think they're losing their skill of hunting, but they're saying to themselves, why waste energy hunting when I know
for
so and so is
sure.
going to drop off some food here soon, or if I
Well,
sit
and
by the
so
road.
this is something that would be interesting. I don't know. uh, Certainly people don't talk about it, but this is where I think the AI, if we compare stock footage and generating something with AI, this is where I think ethically we can do a great thing, which is, and people don't talk about this, but so if you're a production company and you want to go and do some filming in whichever location, let's say it's Katmai, let's say it's Churchill, the two heavily regulated spots. You need permits, you've got to follow rules. There's various levels of enforcement, I suppose. Um, there's things you're allowed to do, there's things you aren't allowed to do. So when a production company comes in and films in person, universally, I can't think of any, I probably wouldn't even want to name them, but like I can't think of any that have ever broken blatant rules on purpose, maybe
Right,
accidentally or something, but
right.
to get a shot. They're following the rules because they're a big production company. They can't risk the fallout.
Yeah.
And I've been on a production before some rules were being tempted to be broken, and it came up from the bottom, and there was discussions without the person that was trying to do it, and it ended up with a phone call to the owner of the company, and all of that was shut down.
Yeah.
Literally, the words on the phone in the video chat to the field was, there's polar bears about 100 feet away, and we're talking on Starlink, and are you, blanking kidding me? This is over. We're not discussing this again. This will not happen.
Yeah.
do whatever you need to make sure that doesn't happen. End of story. Our company
Yeah.
would lose its reputation. And nothing made me feel more proud than hearing that. So the reason
It's
I
nice
say,
to know, like, it's nice to know some people still have a backbone to stand on.
well, yeah, but so the reason I tell that story is because the flip side of it is, as a production company, you want to create a story of bears and wolves in Hallo Bay or something like that. As a production company, when you go in and you operate under your license, you're very thorough. If you buy stock footage, though, so if Jimmy's production company is trying to get a certain sequence and we don't get it, but I go, Chris, I bet you could get that on your own. You could go in yourself. You're just yourself. You're not a production company. You don't need the same permitting. You're not.
Yeah.
You may be held to the same standards officially, but you're happy to fly under the radar and do something questionable. If you get the footage that's required, no question will be asked about how it was gotten.
Right. And
And
I feel like that happens quite a bit, doesn't it?
yeah, that's the thing. It happens way more than we think. In
Yeah.
Canada, with
There's
my background with polar
there's
bears specifically, and
there's
I'll just finish this one, but specifically
yeah.
Svalbard with their heavy regulation changes, there is so much footage coming out of Svalbard now that's all stock because camera operator going in and doing something individually is just almost impossible to catch. So what's better ethically, AI or breaking rules to the point of
Yeah.
baiting wildlife, inhibiting natural behavior, chasing wildlife? I don't know. I do know. I'd rather AI.
Yeah. Wait, and you were saying that guy that posts all those fireweed videos of the bears laying, and that's all baited like you couldn't believe, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty sad.
which is
Like,
sad because, it's just sad.
well, and you can get that same shot. You can get the same footage without doing that. It just takes more dedication.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
takes effort, and it's like it is luck, and luck's only opportunity and circumstance and putting in the time but
Yeah.
you know
Well, like the amount of times that, like, just driving around Kodiak, I've seen nothing, come home, and if I just went there, I would have seen a fox or something. You can't be everywhere at once, and it just happens, and that's just the way it is. But yeah, luck and just putting the time in.
well, and a few years ago, a friend of mine up north was talking about how they had all of these wolverine encounters in the winter, which is unbelievable. I don't care where you live, that's or who you are, that's incredibly special. And then they very quickly admitted to me that this wolverine was living at a garbage dump, or feeding
Yeah.
regularly. And so I asked them, I said, well, do you have good photos? Like kind of like that with a laugh. And they go, no, I can't bring myself to take pictures,
Yeah. Dude, just down the street, our dump, bears are always there. I have a drone shot.
Yeah.
I wanted to just show it off because of how pathetic it is. But,
Well,
like,
that's different.
yeah,
You're taking pictures to show the dump. Like, yeah.
yeah. But I will never just take a photo of a bear just sitting at a dump or whatnot. And I don't even go that way anymore because just so many people that want to go and see it, and I'm
Yeah,
like, I don't want people standing in the middle of the road, and turns into mini Yellowstone here.
for sure. Well, and so that person that had told me about that Wolverine, a couple of years later, I'm talking with a guide and I said, in my life I've had this many Wolverine encounters and, even less photos. And they go, "Oh, didn't you see my amazing Wolverine photos?" And I go, "No, no, where? What?" Like, not a clue. And then they show me. And then right away I go, "Wait a second, was this like, such and such 2 winters ago or whatever it was?" "Yeah, that's it. That's right." And I go, "You went to the dump." And then they sheepishly
Yeah,
go, "Yep."
yeah,
And I go, like, your photo is as bad as an AI generated image now. Like completely AI
yeah,
generated image. You might as well not have taken it. Um,
yeah.
and
And
unfortunately, I
one
have a
of the
good.
most frust
Sorry,
Good.
unfortunately, we both know there's lots of irreputable wildlife photography tour companies out there that have various ethics and or sliding scales. And you know, someone put it to me bluntly one time: if you want to go see a wolverine, I can have you in front of a wolverine in 18 hours, like with a wide angle. We'll just fly to Finland, and you go to a place where there's a
Dude,
blind and they just dump fish on the ground and bait
all
them.
that
And
stuff, all that Finland stuff, man, is so baited. It's so bad.
well, and I
Like
know I know
just
someone that did some footage there for a wildlife documentary, and it was brown bears and wolves. And I mean, as soon as you know what the environment there looks like, you can spot everything that comes out of there. And that person felt very dirty about having done that.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, I could spot it. But also just photographing animals. I've seen like man, this fox is so photogenic, it loves me, and then it turns out it's walking into my lap because
yeah,
so many people have given it bread or whatnot, and I'm just like, I just put the camera down. I'm like, I like watching the animal, but like, I genuinely can't take a photo once I know the bear or an
yeah,
animal has been artificially, there for me. So yeah, it's artificial intelligence, but
for
yeah,
sure. Yeah, it's so I think that's when yeah, the whole mess of AI and the discussion of it, like I think a lot comes down to that. Like if I mean, we're both the same mindset. Like we're looking to see real wildlife and real images, real footage. Now, yeah, we want we want the main subject, we want the main behavior, the bulk of the stuff to be real. But if we know that there's any sort of weird way about getting the other footage, or if there's anything that's not above board, I think filling in the gaps, things that aren't like fundamentally important, like to telling the main story. I think if it's just the accessory shots, it's pretty easy to accept it. Um,
yeah,
Knowing that the world's not as good as we think it is, and the bulk of the photographers or videographers out there aren't having this discussion and having it lead
yeah,
to ethics. More people are talking about AI, and just I mean, kind of like comparing. I remember when AI was first out, and there was some photo of like the three cheetahs or something, and it was kind of like pick the AI one, and there was a lot of people discussing stuff like that with the slant in their discussion of, I have put in so much work and dedication and money getting there to get that shot, and then this person just created it and didn't have to go through the ordeal I went through.
yeah. Well,
And that's, yeah,
another tough subject about AI is generation is coming from stolen content because you
yep,
putting a clip in Premiere Pro or uploading it to the cloud, Adobe's cloud,
for
you're
sure.
authorizing it, whether you realize it or not, you're authorizing them to use this in the AI generated world, which is, I think that is the biggest unethical thing is real people
Absolutely.
have their work stolen with no credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I think Jimmy, I probably get this wrapped up here.
Sounds
Um,
good.
yeah, I'll let you go to bed. I think before I let you go, I'll ask you one question. If for the next person that watches a Nat Geo documentary or BBC film, what do you want them to pay attention to? Something that like is going to be overlooked, and just so for them to appreciate the hard work you put in because I was there for 4 days and I was drained. You're there for 57. Oh, I know you're beaten down.
Um, Geez, I should have thought about this a bit more before, but I would just say pay attention to lighting. Um, Kind of in a cheesy way that it's so important for us as photographers. It's so important for the videography for creating striking scenes, but I feel like the lighting can just give stuff away when it when there's been a lot of dedication and a lot of hard work, and you see sequences that have different angles, but it's the same lighting scene. Because it's very hard to compose that after the fact from different shots from different times.
Yeah.
As much as you can grade something, you can't control it all. It'll always just have that different vibe, I feel. And to me,
Yeah.
that's when you've got like two camera angles on the ground and your camera operators are working together and not really cross shooting. It shows that they've thought about the wildlife and behavior, and it's shown that they've put in the time and gotten in good positions. And then of course that they're actually ready to go and functioning,
Yeah.
to capture it.
For some real quick, I do want to ask one more question because I just made a YouTube video because I want to start using a tripod. I just got a Sockler tripod and everything.
Oh, nice.
Has setting up a tripod ever costed you the shot? You missed it because it just took, even if it takes 10 seconds, you missed the shot. Has that?
Not a tripod, but a shot over. So we had a great big like boom arm mounted on a boat with a GSS, so like the gyro stabilized lens. Inside, we're driving a boat. There's a massive bolted in, ratcheted down, 4-leg pedestal, a boom arm with like 100 pounds of weights on it to counterbalance. And we've been driving at fast speeds with the thing lashed down, and then we're idle speed getting in position, and a polar bear was ready to pounce on a beluga whale. And we're like, I'm pulling in, like I'm at idle speed and I've changed course, and we're getting there as fast as we can. And I'm talking to the camera operator beside me. I'm like, you got to get this camera ready. Like, it's happening. And I'm like, we're going to just keep moving so we're stable, but we're making distance. And the camera operator was doing everything he could, but it was the rest of the production team in the back of the boat that wasn't ready. So the camera was operational inside the stabilizer. Everything was running, but the team was not ready to actually like position the boom arm and get the camera out over the water. And literally we were, 50 to 70 yards away, and this polar bear leapt off a rock in spectacular fashion, landed in an explosion of white, 2,000-pound whales thrashing around. And that sequence just got missed. And so it wasn't a tripod. It was a very, very fancy setup.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's been my goal. Like, if that happened to me as an assistant, when I'm carrying the tripod, that's on me. And like, there's no excuse. Like,
yeah. Because that's one thing I want to start using this tripod, but I know like there's just sometimes things are just happening, and even if I was as fast as humanly possible, I feel like I could miss them, especially on Kodiak Island. So many bushes and stuff for an animal to just disappear into and never see again.
Yeah.
So sometimes you only have 10 seconds, and that's why I've always been kind of anti-tripod, because it's so much easier to just jump on and lay on the ground for a second. But yeah, that's just my thought on.
And something I've seen numerous different camera operators use, which was cool to see this. Like, even a guy that his background is like traditional trained camera operator in theater and like production sets. He did this, and a purely wildlife videographer did this, but they used a cinesaddle, so it's just a great big beanbag, about 2 feet diameter and about a foot thick. And there's so many times where it's like something's about to happen. We're going from, one set of legs to another or whatever, and they just throw the whole red camera with a 1,000mm lens on a beanbag, and they get the shot. And that's experience, having that. Like, that thing's nothing to carry. It's the lightest thing in the world, and it just saves the day sometimes. Because a tripod can be aggravating.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for your time in this. This is our very first podcast, and I know you're about to have a busy summer, so I'm hoping once everything calms down, we can reconnect and maybe see if AI made any progress or any life updates and whatnot. But thank you so much for joining. And if you just want to say a little shout out or a little goodbye, I guess, and we'll
Sounds
get this
good. Yeah,
video
it was
wrapped up.
awesome to chat with you again. And it was a pleasure meeting you last, I guess, June, and seeing you again in October or September. And so hopefully I'll
Yeah.
get to Alaska here this coming summer. So we'll get out there and shoot together just for fun this time, maybe.
Yep. All right, Jimmy. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Have a good night. Thank you.
You too.